Coming up today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, me and Doug go back and forth drafting some futures odds with the Hornets. Who could win most improved player? Who do we think has the best shot to make an all-star game defensive player of the year? Probably not defensive player of the year. Plus, we'll talk about who wore it best. All today, LOH.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. And that includes you, too. Doug Branson, he's here, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also can listen to his other podcast, Locked On NBA, with Matt Moore and Hayes. Make that your second listen. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m., 92.7 FM. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We got a fun idea cooked up for you degenerates today. Doug, share with the people what kind of idea you got for the people.
Well, of course, I have an idea that I stole. It is not an original idea, but it is a fantastic idea nonetheless. It is from the Locked On Raptors podcast, who could have stolen it from someone else. I'm not sure if it's their original idea or not.
And this feels like something we do anyway. This feels like a Locked On Hornets bit, too.
That makes it okay to steal. When it feels like something that would have come from you had you thought of it, it's okay to steal it. That's the law. We also talked about this on Locked On NBA. It's Longshot Awards drafting. So the Locked On Raptors podcast did this. They looked at their team and they said, who are the Longshot Awards odds players? And then we're going to draft those players. I would like to actually somewhat modify it and say that you don't have to be a player that currently has odds with our friends at FanDuel on one of these awards. I think we open this up and say you can pick someone who currently does it. I guess that's the most long shot of long shot odds.
Yeah.
If you don't have any odds at all.
Well, I love this idea. I agree with it. I also am a little scared now that you might take one of my options because you are opening it up. Because I myself, for one of the options that I'd like to look at, would have to open it up to some of the options not listed on FanDuel. So now I'm a little worried. But this is your quote unquote idea, Doug. So you can lead us off. I will give you the first overall selection, and you can let us know your first overall pick. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. There's your jingle. The first overall pick for the Longshot Award.
Okay, a lot of interesting prospects here. I'm not going to go with LaMelo Ball for MVP. I think that's a few years away. Cup MVP, that's interesting. LaMelo Ball at plus 17,500. If they do, look, if the Hornets make a surprise run and win the Cup, it's going to be because LaMelo Ball is playing MVP level basketball. It won't be because of Brandon Miller or any of these other players. I mean, it's just going to be right now, it's going to be because of LaMelo Ball. All right, so for me, it's between Con Knipple at plus 3,500 for Rookie of the Year. He's like the top of the second tier. You'd probably need an injury or two for that to happen, but I think he's going to get enough play this season to at least put up numbers such that he could be in position. But I'm not going to go that way. I am going to stay safe and pick the shortest of the long odds that we have listed here, and I'm going to go Brandon Miller, most improved player. I think a lot of people have forgotten about Brandon Miller, and I think if you're going to win it in the position that Brandon Miller is in, you have to be a little bit forgotten because of the injury, because of the wrist injury. People were super high. He was making top 100 lists in the NBA before that wrist injury, and so people were high on him. He has enough people that loved him during draft time who continued to talk about him into his sophomore campaign that I think in this third year, if he comes out just on fire, and he's already near 20 points per game scored in that sophomore campaign, so it's not out of the question. I think he could absolutely get some love for most improved player.
Yeah, Brandon Miller at MIP would have to be in consideration for, I think, at least your first three options. If you want to get a little crazy, then maybe you could go with some other ones, but I do like that pick. Brandon Miller, MIP, first overall selection. I'm going to stay in a similar space here, Doug. And this guy is actually not listed. The odds, it's not listed on FanDuel. I'm going to go with LaMelo Ball, most improved player of the year.
Oh, I was not thinking of that. Man, that is good. That is good.
Yeah.
All right, explain yourself because I have some thoughts too.
So you went with Brandon Miller. You made a good point. Here we are. So complimentary of each other today. It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good weekend. So
Well, I'll tell you why, because we're going to talk Eddie Jones later. That's why.
I know we did get hyped. For those obviously everybody that didn't watch us before we started the show, Doug said, "Let
If
me
you
watch
did
some Eddie
watch us
Jones."
before the show, how? I need to. My internet has been compromised.
That is not the kind of sicko that we want here on the Locked On Podcast Network. The sicko that's looking at me through that window right across the room. I see you. Brandon Miller, we got excited about that with watching Eddie Jones highlights before. Doug was like, yeah, I need to get hyped up. It's basically our coffee. It's our energy drink, Eddie Jones energy drink. Buy it today. Anyways, MIP. Brandon Miller, you talked about him being forgotten and that being a huge play. I think LaMelo is in that same space, but more so that everybody is just so down on LaMelo that if he just gets back to a spot where he plays at the efficiency level he played with his second year in the league, I think people are going to make a 180-degree turn on him. Plus, the Hornets, I expect, like if the Hornets make a big team jump and LaMelo is the head of the snake on that, he's going to get a lot of love with the overall team success. And what we do every year with Most Improved Player, we oftentimes like to do the whole, Michael Jordan was so good, I actually think he's underrated. LeBron James, he's so good, I actually think LeBron is underrated. We do that every year with MIP. Even if those guys don't win the award, they're somewhere second, they're somewhere third. Like guys that are all-stars that make a all-NBA jump, they're in consideration for Most Improved Player of the Year. So if a guy like LaMelo made an all-star game his second year, it's been a little while, he's gotten injured, whatever. If he stays on the court, okay, he's got to play the 65-game threshold to be eligible for these awards, which is no small thing. So he's got to play 65 games. But if he stays on the court, the team has success. He changes his reputation with the winning, not being a winning player and having a higher efficiency level with better teammates around him. I just think all of that is a recipe for, you know what? Maybe LaMelo just becomes Most Improved Player of the Year.
If he plays 65 plus games, I will vote for him for MVP. I don't care what the stats are. I don't care what his efficiency is. If he plays 65 plus games, he will be MVP of the Hornets. He'll be MVP of the NBA as far as I'm concerned. And I don't have a vote yet, and they may not give me one after I just said that. I should have opened the segment the same way that I opened this segment on Locked On NBA, which is by mentioning Steve Clifford, who had an anecdote that always, or just an observation that always sticks in my mind when talking about NBA awards and talking about the Charlotte Hornets. And he said, when a team that didn't make the playoffs in the previous season suddenly makes the playoffs in the next season, it's usually, that leap is usually because 2 or 3 players got into awards conversations that they were nowhere near in the previous season. So that's really what we're talking about is these long shot awards, getting guys like Miller in the Most Improved conversation, LaMelo in the Most Improved conversation, Con Knippel in the Rookie of the Year conversation. And one of these players, Colin Sexton, Trey Mann, Con Knippel, needs to get into the sixth man conversation as well. I'm sure one of those will come up in these long shot talks that we're going to do in the next segment.
Real quickly before we end this first segment, I know there's not really any odds for LaMelo making All-NBA or making an All-Star game. In case you were wondering, why wouldn't you just take LaMelo making the All-Star game? The odds would be better there, so wouldn't you just select that? There's nothing you can do to put money down on that, I don't believe. Like, I'm not the greatest with putting money down on it, but yeah, when you're talking about awards, it's the individual awards that we're discussing, just in case anybody was thinking, just bet on him to make an All-Star game.
Here's something interesting. Does Brandon Miller's injury last season actually help LaMelo Ball if he were to be in consideration for a Most Improved Player? And what I mean is this. If Brandon Miller had been healthy last season and absolutely balled out, I don't think the Hornets win too many more games. I think they're probably, instead of 19 wins, they crawl into like the 25. They still would have been in contention for one of the top picks, or at least a very high lottery pick, right? And because the rest of the roster wasn't up to snuff. I don't think Brandon was going to drag them into some kind of play-in contention, even if he had balled out all year long. But if he had, and then the Hornets did improve, I think there would have been a lot of conversation about like, well, yeah, LaMelo improved a little bit and their whole team improved, but it's not really about LaMelo's improvement. It's about Brandon Miller's continued growth. The more focus would have been on Brandon Miller going into that third season, and I think it would have taken some of the attention away from any improvements that LaMelo would have made.
Yeah, I do think that. Also, just there's probably an issue within Most Improved Player of the Year award anyway with having to discuss, okay, who made the bigger jump, which means you are pseudo-arguing, no, this player was actually worse last year. So you're trying to argue who was a worse basketball player last year. And if that's a part of the equation, then it's probably a little wonky in how you're giving this award out. But LaMelo did not have a good second half of the season. After the All-Star break, it was a fantastic showing, especially in the fourth quarter in that Lakers win. And boy, he hit a cold streak with all sorts of G League players that were surrounding him. So, but yes, to answer your question, I think Brandon not being out there hurts LaMelo because it hurts the team. And then LaMelo is chucking up a bunch of shots. It hurts his efficiency. And that way he had a worse year. Now you can use that to boost his argument to win Most Improved Player of the Year award if he just gets back to, like, again, average efficiency on some pretty impressive traditional stats.
Also, people keep complaining that the Most Improved Player goes to like just a couple of particular types of players, giving it to somebody like LaMelo Ball, who did put up gaudy numbers when he was healthy last season, but giving it to him because he's improved in other areas of his game and the team improves, that would be going in a different direction.
There you go. Let's try to do something different and around here. Locked On Hornets coming up next on the LOH podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We have another round to get to. So one more draft pick between me and Doug, and then, we'll talk about who wore it best. All coming up next, LOH. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. We doing a snake draft, or do you just want to go back and forth here, Doug? You want to go snake? All right.
It's always snake. Never ask that question. It's always snake.
It is always snake. You're right about that. I apologize for asking.
Thank you.
Went LaMelo Ball, Most Improved Player of the Year in the first round. I think Colin Sexton, sixth man, is my next selection.
I might actually put money on this.
Okay. So you like it. I thought you were going to say money on what your decision is. No, I'm going to go Colin Sexton at plus 6,000. I love Trey Mann. He's at plus 10,000 here. You had to make a decision between the two. I think what Colin did in Utah, even if it was on a bad team, put up some numbers that when you look at his basketball reference page, it's enticing. It's impressive. Hornets have success. They sneak into the play-in tournament. A lot of these awards are predicated on team success, to be honest with you. But if they get there, I think Colin Sexton and his offense is going to be a pretty big reason why they're going to get here. The big thing you're banking on is that Colin doesn't start. And that's not a foregone conclusion. So if he starts, then you automatically lose all your money that you put down.
Correct.
There's a really good shot here of him starting. So it's LaMelo, it's Colin, it's Brandon, it's Miles, and then it's Moussa Diabate. Okay, money out the window if he starts over 40 or whatever the threshold is there. But if Trey or Josh Green or Con Knipple sneaks in there in the back end, then maybe, just maybe, you can win this. But it's a big hurdle. But if you clear that hurdle, Doug, I think you start to feel pretty good about it with him averaging over 18. We've already done the stats stuff, but 18 points per game, I think that's in play here in Charlotte, just like it was in Utah. I think that's a possibility. The high shooting percentage, I think that's in play here. I think you might get the highlights of Colin working alongside some of these other players in Charlotte, like Brandon, like LaMelo. So the YouTube shorts, the clips that circulate on social media, I think will be in the NBA consciousness a little bit more. And they'll already have this preconceived notion in the back of their mind. Yeah, Colin, was kind of interesting in Cleveland. He was kind of interesting in Utah. You just didn't watch because both those teams sucked when he was on them. So maybe the Hornets don't suck, and you get those YouTube shorts. Colin Sexton at plus 6,000 to win Sixth Man of the Year. The Sexth Man, if you will. I'm picking him for my next draft pick.
I like that. I like that a lot, and I would put money on it, and that money would evaporate immediately if he did start. But I would still, and maybe that's bad because you know our record on Bet the Buzz.
Yeah, man, I felt bad immediately upon you saying that. Yeah,
that's a good one. I mean, you could also go Con Knipple here. He's not listed, but I think he could get some six-man love if he were to come off the bench. Although more and more, I think there's a chance, not Trey Mann starts. I mean, I think there's a chance that they put Con Knipple alongside LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, and just because of size, because Con Knipple's 6'7", and Colin Sexton is 6'3", and yes, LaMelo Ball is a tall point guard, but I just think in terms of size on the defensive end, it could help. I mean, Colin Sexton's more experienced, but certainly not somebody that's lauded for his defense. Con's a rookie and not necessarily, I think there are a lot of questions about can he hang defensively in the NBA his rookie season, but I think they might have a better shot with Con at 2 and then bring Colin Sexton off the bench, for scoring purposes.
Well, and you talk about MIP going to a certain type of player. That's especially true for Sixth Man. We love giving the Sixth Man of the Year award to the guy that basically scores the most per game. And that comes off of the pine. And if Colin Sexton is there, if he's somewhere within that realm, then automatically you fit the prototype of who usually receives this award. The assist numbers, I don't think they would be as good as Con if Con got a significant role off of the bench. Let's say he climbs up to 30 minutes per game. I think you'd see the playmaking for Con really help him out. But the last thing I'll say about Colin is I talked with Charles Lee on the schedule release show we did on WFNZ. So this was just a week ago today, to be exact. And he discussed Colin as being the loudest voice in the room in practice and just being an outright bull, being a guy that challenges everyone, the energy. In fact, Charles Lee was laughing talking about Colin Sexton with the tenacity that he brings to the practice court. So, it's a lot, but, we love it. That's exactly the kind of energy that we want within the room. And so with the head coach speaking about Colin that glowingly, it just feels like he's about tired of this losing BS and really wants to make an impact, whether it be off the bench or in the starting lineup.
You know whose fault this is, that I can't make money on plus 6,000 Sexton, sixth man, just automatically. It's just a coin flip because Sexton could start. You know whose fault this is, right?
It's not yours. It's not yours.
Not my fault. It's Josh Green's fault. Yeah. If Josh Green played better last season and wasn't injured, it's automatic. Josh Green, his ability to play defense, it's automatic that he would start. And then Sexton, Knipple, Mann, just this three-headed monster of offense coming off the bench. It's perfect, except I just don't even think Josh Green is playable on this team anymore, and he's injured, and so it's all his fault.
Well, and maybe, you mentioned the defense. I guess they did play Josh Green a lot last year. No, they did not have the team they have this year. But if Josh Green, let's say Colin starts and we all feel like, okay, great, money wasted now. Maybe they try to bring Josh Green up to speed and he starts once we get to December after getting over that injury because they need a little bit, just a tiny bit of defense in the starting lineup. Moose is not enough. So we need just a tiny bit more out there on the perimeter. Enter Josh Green. I think there's that scenario that could play out too.
All right, I can be boring here and go Rookie of the Year, Con Knipple at plus 3,500. Again, he's top of a second tier. Trey Johnson actually, your second best odds. I mean, it's Cooper Flagg like minus 180. And then you go down to plus 300, I think. I don't have it pulled up right in front of me, but it's like close to plus 300 for Trey Johnson because he's going to get so much opportunity there in Washington and so many shots. And then it's everybody else. Ace Bailey slightly above. I'm surprised he's not higher, honestly, because I think he's going to get the same opportunity in Utah. But Con Knippel, the top of the second tier. So I could be boring and go that way. But you know what? I'm not going to be boring. I'm going to say LaMelo Ball, not MVP of the league. That would be ridiculous. I'm going NBA Cup MVP, LaMelo Ball. Something burns inside of him. He decides, I want it. I want this team to want it. We're all get on my back team. We're going to the Cup, and I'm going to win MVP. Plus 17,500. Over the break, I will calculate if I put $10 on that today, what I could win.
So
you might be able to do the math. I can't.
Oh, no, I can't do it. Don't task me with that. LaMelo Ball to win overall MVP is plus 20,000. LaMelo Ball to win Cup MVP, as you mentioned, plus 17,500. So the odds better for LaMelo to win the NBA Cup MVP. Yeah, I like that pick. I'm not a big fan of picking Con Knippel as Rookie of the Year. Not really on my radar. I tried to make the case because the odds were a lot better in terms of it happening than some of the other categories we could pick from. I just don't think it's going to happen. You're
betting on LaMelo getting hurt. That's the problem with doing that bet at all, is you're really betting
other guys,
on LaMelo getting hurt.
Yeah, and maybe even some other guys too. Like if Trey suffers some injuries again, Colin goes down with something. Now instead of you staggering minutes between Colin, and Trey, now it's just all Con. All right, so now you get some minutes there. I just think there's such a flag fever. I think there's so much appetite for Trey Johnson putting up crazy numbers with Washington because they don't have anybody else. Yeah, I don't love it. There are less hurdles to clear, yet I still think the hurdles are pretty damn high off the ground. Anyway, we can get more to it. Coming up next.
$1,700, by the way, $1,760 to be exact. If you put $10 down on LaMelo Ball Cup MVP, if I win that, folks, what's the best steakhouse in Uptown Charlotte these days? Steaks on me, Walker.
Dressler's
on me,
steak.
Walker. Dress nice for Dresslers.
Yes, by the way, they have the best side dish in Charlotte, and it's the sweet potato duck confit. Oh, my God. It's the best side dish in the city of Charlotte. Let's go to Dressler's, baby. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
I'm going to wear it best at the steakhouse is who wears it best. We're going to go with who wore it best number 6 today. We did the 7 number jersey. We're going 6 today. Maybe we get to 5. I doubt it. But who wore it best comes up next, LOA.
I'm going to wear a bib.
Duck confit. Oh, God. French it up. Invite Musa, maybe Tijan Salon.
Oh, there you go.
I'm excited. Who wore it best? Tell us where we are, Doug.
We just did number 7 yesterday, so naturally that means we move on to the number 6. Only 7 players donned the number 6 in Charlotte Hornets history. Michael Holton was the first, original Hornet, 1989 to 1990. Eddie Jones picks it up nearly a decade later, 1999 to 2000, wore the number 6. Jerome Moiso, I don't know.
Moiso, maybe?
Moiso?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
2002. Nazi Muhammad, 2008, 2009, the first Bobcat to wear the number 6. Tyson Chandler in 2010. Shelvin Mack in 2019. I remember that name. And then Jalen McDaniels, I think, wore it the longest from 2020 to 2023.
That's my guy, Jalen McDaniels. So it's pretty clear who wins this one. Did you get to the name yet? I didn't even hear you mention the name yet.
I said Eddie Jones, 1999.
Oh, you did? Okay, all right. Yeah, that's our guy. I was about to say, maybe I was looking up Eddie Jones' stats. I probably was looking him up as you said that name. Mm-hmm. So Eddie Jones has to be the answer here. Is there anybody else that would even come close to Eddie in wearing it best?
No, but before we talk about Eddie, just want to drop a Jalen McDaniels fact. I forgot that Jalen wore the number 6. I was actually looking ahead at number 5, and Juwan Howard wore the number 5 for the Charlotte Bobcats in 2009. And fun fact, he is the cousin of Jalen McDaniels, who wore the number 6.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. Oh, we were talking
I don't know
about
if it's awesome, but it's a little fun nugget.
I stand by it. It's awesome. We were talking about this on Weston Walker, and it's rare for us to see the classic, do you remember this player played for this team? It's rare for me to be crazy surprised by one of those images just because we've run that through the mill on social media so many times. It is still genuinely jarring to see Juwan Howard in a Bobcats jersey. That one slips my mind. I always forget about that one, even as a Bobcat, Horncat fan. But anyways, Juwan Howard, shout out. Eddie Jones, I'll open up with this. Most underrated season in Hornets history. Eddie Jones, the year that he played with Charlotte. I think that's it. The 1999-2000 season in which he played 72 games in the Queen City. He was third in Defensive Player of the Year. He was an All-Star. He was third-team All-NBA. He was second-team All-Defense. And this was his lone All-NBA selection his entire NBA career. That's with the Hornets at the turn of the millennium. And so if you look at the amount of games the Hornets won that season, they were 49 and 33. They were one game away from winning 50. So it's not like he even was a good stats, bad team guy. It's Eddie Jones leading that kind of squad. I think most underrated season in Hornets history.
Oh, he led it with his defense, too. I mean, nearly three. So he comes over in the lockout season, 98-99. And he comes over with Eldon Campbell in a trade with Los Angeles for Glenn Rice, J.R. Reed, they trade him a second time, and B.J. Armstrong. And so you're transitioning out of the Glenn Rice era because you can't afford to extend Glenn Rice. And that lockout season was cursed. Had everyone stayed healthy, I believe Del Curry said this on our show, had that team stayed healthy, he thought that team had a shot at doing some damage. Because obviously, I mean, you didn't have Jordan in the league anymore, and they had a squad that was coming off a great year previously. And so, but that was cursed from the beginning because Anthony Mason blows a bicep, misses the entire regular season. Dave Cowens resigns, and that was a whole weird thing where it was like, does Cowens want to coach anymore? He was kind of Kerry Collins before Kerry Collins. I don't know. Maybe at the same time. Maybe Charlotte was dealing with like two people who didn't want to.
Kerry was earlier. Yeah. Kerry was earlier.
So you had Kerry Collins and then followed by Dave Cowens, who was like, I don't know if I want to coach anymore. So he resigns, and then Paul Silas takes over, does improve the team somewhat after a 4-11 start. But just a cursed season. Glenn Rice gets injured as well. So they decide, all right, we're going to redo this whole thing. They trade for Eddie Jones, by the way. LA was willing to give up Eddie Jones. Do you know why LA was willing to give up Eddie Jones?
Yes, but I forget. Tell me.
Well, it's because Kobe Bryant. Because they were like, oh, we got this thing in Kobe. He's he's rocking and rolling. So it's like we don't really need Eddie Jones anymore. Of course, Charlotte had originally drafted Kobe Bryant. But we get Eddie Jones, we get Eldon Campbell. Maybe it was a thank you for Kobe Bryant ultimately. It was like, hey, appreciate you guys here. How about Eddie Jones? 3 steals per game in 30 games for that broken season. NBA All-Defense second team in the half season that he played for Charlotte. And then, as you said, All-NBA third team, almost gets Defensive Player of the Year. Probably should have gotten Defensive Player of the Year. I'll look up who actually won it, but probably should have gotten it. Eddie Jones, great. And then they end up trading him. That was in the deal with Miami for Jamal Mashburn, which would institute the final era of the original Charlotte Hornets.
It was the last trade that Bob Bass would make with Charlotte that had that kind of impact. And we've done this a million times. I'm begging for a Bob Bass 30 for 30 around here. Speaking of which, shout out to the short documentary on Eric Collins. I have not watched it yet. For full disclosure, I need to watch it, but it won some type of award. Maybe we can do a segment on that next week to give that some love because that was awesome. But I do want another one of these short docs on Bob Bass. And speaking of underrated, I just think Bob Bass might be one of the more underrated GMs in league history, and I don't say that lightly. The way in which he was able to navigate an owner who did not want to pay the stars. And so when you had to ship out one legitimate star out of the Queen City, all he would do was just bring in another one. And this was the last trade that he made was in that line. So you trade Eddie Jones and Ricky Davis and Anthony Mason, like a big time trade, sending all those guys to Miami. You mentioned it for PJ Brown and Jamal Mashburn, who fit with one another on this team like a glove. And then, of course, you got Eddie Jones because of the Glenn Rice trade, and then you got Glenn Rice because of what you had to do with Alonzo. It just didn't matter. You just kept bringing in stars and guys, by the way, that would have their best years here in Charlotte. So he picked the right guys anyway. Eddie Jones, along that lineage of excellent trades from Bob Bass.
So I did look this up. Defensive Player of the Year that year went to Alonzo Mourning of Miami, and he won 62 first place votes, and he nearly had 4 blocks in that season, and then followed by Shaquille O'Neal with 21 votes, and then Eddie Jones and Dikembe Mutombo each getting 11 votes. So fine Alonzo with his nearly 4 blocks a game with the Miami team that was near the top of the league. That's probably good for Defensive Player of the Year. But the fact that Eddie Jones as a guard was able to hang with all of those centers,
I agree.
I think says a ton. Also, Anthony Mason for the Charlotte Hornets got a vote. And Eddie Jones getting traded to the Charlotte Hornets for Glenn Rice was the first signal that Charlotte in those last few years was shifting towards defense. And in the move to send Eddie Jones to Miami, coming back was not only Jamal Mashburn, but also P.J. Brown, who would further cement the defense. Eldon Campbell, also a big part of the defense. And Charlotte got his last remaining few years before he fell off a cliff when they moved to New Orleans. But that was like Charlotte for so long. I mean, even going back into the Bogues, LJ, Zoe years, even though Zoe was a monster defensively, that team wanted to play fast and they wanted to play offense first, defense second. And with the Eddie Jones trade, it was the first signaling that the Hornets, I think, were moving towards, and Silas being the coach also helped that. They were moving towards defense first.
The other take that I always have in silly season when we mention Eddie Jones or especially Glenn Rice, when every once in a while you see on Twitter what player would be better today than they were in their era, I think of those two players, Glenn Rice and Eddie Jones, where Glenn is just shooting 47% from 3 on high volume and playing every single second. You know my love for Glenn Rice. It is also there for Eddie with the perimeter defense. He shot 37.5% from 3 this season, we're discussing with the Hornets, and not crazy efficient overall, only like 43, but even still high volume, great defense. Dude was a stud. Eddie Jones, salute to you, sir. You wore it best. That'll do it for today's edition of Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Go check out everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also, go check out Locked On NBA. Doug is hosting them both. Go to Locked On NBA. Make that your second listen with Matt Moore and Hayes. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you next week.
Steaks on me.